Emma had always known that life was not about material wealth. She had been raised in a modest home on the outskirts of a small town, where every penny was carefully spent and nothing was ever wasted. Her family, especially her mother, taught her the value of hard work and resilience. Despite their financial struggles, Emma's childhood was filled with love, warmth, and cherished memories. It was a life filled with quiet dignity, even though they had little to show in terms of material possessions. As Emma grew older, she had always dreamed of a grand wedding, much like the ones she'd read about in fairy tales. She imagined a beautiful church, a dress fit for a princess, and a reception with endless laughter and joy. But Emma's reality was different. She knew that her family didn't have the money to create such an extravagant celebration. The truth was, her family had barely enough to get by. Yet Emma didn't mind. She had Liam, the love of her life, and that was all that mattered. Liam, too, came from humble beginnings. His family wasn't wealthy either, but they had always been kind-hearted, generous, and supportive. Liam loved Emma for who she was, not for the things she had or didn't have. Their relationship was built on a solid foundation of love, trust, and mutual respect. They had been dating for 3 years before Liam proposed, and Emma had accepted without hesitation. The proposal was simple, yet perfect. Liam had taken her to the same hilltop where they first met and asked her to be his forever. Of course, Emma had said yes. The planning for their wedding was a bittersweet experience. Emma couldn't help but feel a pang of disappointment when she saw other couples posting pictures of their elaborate weddings on social media. Beautiful gowns, lavish venues, and luxurious decorations, things Emma could only dream of. She wanted her wedding to be special, but there was only so much she could do with a tight budget. The wedding dress she had chosen was simple, modest, but it was all she could afford. The venue was a small, charming church that was just big enough to accommodate their closest family and friends. There was no grand banquet hall, no expensive catering, just a small gathering of the people they loved most. Still, Emma remained hopeful. She told herself that what mattered most was the love between her and Liam, not the extravagance of the event. But as the wedding day grew closer, the pressure started to mount. The town where Emma lived was filled with people who, for the most part, had much more than she did. Many came from wealthy families, and the gossip in the small town could be cruel. Emma had always tried to stay out of the spotlight, avoiding any attention. But with her wedding on the horizon, it was impossible to ignore the whispers and stares from the townspeople. At the local grocery store, a group of women from a wealthier neighborhood casually commented on Emma's wedding plans. They didn't mean to be cruel, but their words stung. "Can you believe how simple her wedding is going to be?" one woman whispered, glancing at Emma's shopping cart filled with the basics for the ceremony. "No grand hall, no designer dress, how embarrassing." Another woman chuckled. "I heard she can't even afford the big reception. Just a small dinner at the church. How quaint." Emma had overheard their comments and felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. She wanted to say something, to defend her wedding and her choices, but she didn't have the energy to argue. She simply picked up her things, paid for them, and left. Her heart felt heavy as she walked home, feeling small and insignificant in a world that seemed to value wealth above everything else. When Emma arrived home, her mother was there waiting for her, as she always was. Her mother's face lit up when she saw Emma, but Emma couldn't bring herself to smile. "Is something wrong, sweetheart?" her mother asked, noticing the look on her face. Emma hesitated, then sighed. "It's the wedding, Mom. They're talking. They say it's too simple, that we don't have enough money for a proper celebration." Her mother walked over and took her hand. "Emma, your wedding is about love, not money. You are marrying a good man who loves you for who you are, not for the things you own. Don't let anyone make you feel small because of your choices." Emma nodded, but the words didn't make her feel any better. She wanted to believe her mother, but the pressure of the town's expectations was hard to ignore. She spent the rest of the evening trying to push the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the wedding preparations. But the sting of the comments lingered in the back of her mind. The day before the wedding arrived, and Emma was busy with last-minute details. She and her mother had spent the morning baking a small cake for the reception, and her father had helped set up the church with the few decorations they had bought. Liam's family had contributed by providing the simple meal for the reception, but even that had been modest. Nothing extravagant. Emma's friends, too, had helped in their own ways. They had pitched in to create some small centerpieces for the tables, and one friend had lent Emma a beautiful veil she had worn at her own wedding. It wasn't a lot, but Emma was grateful for the help. When the day finally arrived, Emma tried to focus on the love that would surround her. She was excited to marry Liam and start their life together, but the weight of the day was heavy on her shoulders. As she got dressed, she looked at herself in the mirror. The dress, though simple, fit her perfectly, and the veil added a touch of elegance. She could almost see herself as the bride she had always dreamed of, though she knew it wasn't the fairy tale version. She was a real woman with real struggles, marrying the man she loved with all her heart. When the ceremony began, Emma walked down the aisle, her heart pounding with nerves. She caught sight of Liam at the altar, his smile wide and full of love. He was dressed in a simple suit, the kind that wasn't overly expensive, but it fit him well. He looked at her with pride in his eyes, as if she were the most beautiful woman in the world. The ceremony went smoothly, and Emma could feel the love of those around her. But as she glanced at the guests, she noticed the subtle glances, the quiet whispers. Some of them had clearly expected something more, and it made Emma's heart ache. She wanted to tell them that this was enough, that love was enough, but the words didn't come. After the ceremony, the reception was held in the church's small hall. The room was filled with laughter, but also with judgment. Emma and Liam greeted their guests, and as they did, the guests' eyes would drift to the humble surroundings. The simple decorations, the small cake, the modest meal, it wasn't what anyone had expected. As Emma served the food, she overheard a few snide remarks. One of Liam's distant cousins, a woman she hardly knew, made a comment loud enough for Emma to hear. "I can't believe they couldn't afford more for this wedding. It's almost embarrassing." Emma tried to smile, but the hurt was evident in her eyes. Liam noticed and took her hand, offering a reassuring squeeze. "Don't listen to them," he whispered. "This is our day. Let's enjoy it." But Emma couldn't shake the feeling of being judged. She wanted this day to be perfect, but the weight of the mockery was too much to bear. Little did she know the day would soon take a turn that no one could have ever expected. As the evening wore on, the small hall was filled with the sounds of laughter, light chatter, and the clinking of glasses. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She could feel the eyes of the guests on her, their quiet whispers floating in the air. The simple decorations, the modest meal, none of it was good enough for the wealthier families who had shown up. Emma smiled, trying to appear cheerful, but it was hard. She caught glimpses of the richer families as they exchanged glances and rolled their eyes at the plainness of the event. They didn't understand. They didn't know how hard her family had worked to make this day happen. They didn't see the love that surrounded her, and that hurt. Liam noticed her discomfort as they moved through the crowd greeting guests. He took her hand and whispered, "Don't worry about them. We're here to celebrate our love, and nothing else matters." She nodded, but deep down she couldn't ignore the sting of judgment. She didn't want to dwell on it, but it was hard not to. She had dreamed of this day for so long, and now it felt as though it was being overshadowed by other people's opinions. The evening went on, and though Emma did her best to enjoy herself, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being looked down upon. She watched as the other guests sipped wine and laughed, their stories filled with tales of lavish vacations, expensive gifts, and elegant parties. Meanwhile, Emma felt out of place, as though she didn't belong in their world. At one point, she overheard a conversation between two women sitting at a nearby table. They were both dressed in extravagant gowns, their laughter echoing through the room. "Did you see the dress she's wearing?" one of the women said with a snicker. "It looks like something from a thrift store." The other woman nodded, her face twisted in a look of disapproval. "It's such a shame. She's marrying a good man, but this wedding, it's nothing compared to what she could have had. I'm sure Liam could have afforded something better." Emma's heart sank. She didn't want to eavesdrop, but their words cut deep. She had worked hard to make sure everything was perfect, and to have it all reduced to a joke was painful. She excused herself from the conversation and made her way to a quieter corner of the hall, feeling the weight of the evening pressing down on her shoulders. Liam, noticing she had slipped away, followed her. He found her standing by the window looking out at the darkened sky, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. "Emma," Liam said softly, walking up to her. "What's going on? You've been quiet for a while now." She turned to face him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. I feel like they're all laughing at us, Liam. I wanted this day to be special, but they keep judging us." They don't see how hard we worked to make this happen. To them, it's just a cheap wedding. Liam's face softened and he stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I know it's hard. I know it feels like they don't understand, but they don't matter. This is our day, Emma. It's about us and no one else. Emma nodded, but the hurt was still there. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the love they shared was enough to overcome all the criticism and judgment. But the doubts lingered, gnawing at her heart. As the night continued, more guests mingled and the sound of chatter grew louder. Emma found herself retreating further into herself, trying to smile and enjoy the evening. But it was becoming harder to keep up the facade. She was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. Every time someone laughed or made a comment, her heart sank a little more. At one point, Emma noticed the group of women who had been gossiping earlier. They were standing near the entrance, their eyes on the chest that had been placed at the back of the room. The chest, which had been a part of Emma's family for generations, had been the subject of much curiosity, but no one knew what was inside. Emma's mother had told her to leave it closed, that it was meant for a special moment, but as the evening wore on, the guests became more and more intrigued by it. One of the women, Miriam, a member of Liam's extended family, was particularly persistent. She walked over to the chest and gave it a firm push, trying to lift it. This thing is so heavy, Miriam muttered. What's inside? A bunch of old junk? The others laughed and Emma's stomach churned. The chest wasn't junk, it was a family heirloom, a symbol of her family's legacy. Her great-grandfather had built it, and it had been passed down through generations. It wasn't just a piece of furniture, it was a piece of their history. Miriam tried again to lift the chest, but it didn't budge. She struggled with it for a few moments, her face turning red from the effort. The others watched, amused by her failed attempts. Come on, let's see what's inside, one of the women said with a laugh. I bet it's just some old clothes or something. Emma's face flushed with embarrassment. The chest wasn't meant to be opened by anyone but her, and certainly not by someone like Miriam, who had no understanding of its significance. It wasn't just a family relic, it was a part of her heritage. But instead of confronting the group or explaining its importance, Emma stayed quiet, retreating further into herself. She looked over at Liam, who had been talking to some of his friends. He caught her eye and gave her a reassuring smile, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. It wasn't just the guests. It was the fact that she felt like an outsider in her own celebration. As the evening drew to a close, the music faded, and the guests began to leave. The laughter and chatter slowly died down, and Emma felt the exhaustion of the day settle over her. It had been a long, emotional day, and though it was meant to be a celebration, it had left her feeling drained. She and Liam stood together at the door, thanking their guests as they left. Emma smiled, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She had given everything she had to make this day special, but it had never felt like enough. After the last guest left, Liam turned to her and took her hand. I know today wasn't perfect, he said gently, but we have each other and that's all that matters. Emma nodded, but the weight of the evening still pressed on her heart. She wanted to believe him, to let go of the hurt, but it wasn't that simple. The judgment, the laughter, and the whispers still lingered in her mind. She could only hope that in time the true meaning of the day would shine through, not in the eyes of others, but in her heart. As the evening wore on, the guests slowly trickled out of the reception hall, leaving behind empty chairs and untouched plates of food. The laughter and chatter that had filled the room earlier had faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Emma and Liam stood together by the door, greeting the last few guests with forced smiles. Emma's heart felt heavy, the weight of the day's events pressing down on her. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She had imagined this day for so long, dreamed of it even. The moment she would marry Liam, the man she loved, surrounded by friends and family. But now it felt as though her joy had been overshadowed by the whispers, the judgment and the feeling that nothing she had done was ever enough. As the last of the guests left, Liam turned to Emma, his face soft with concern. You okay? He asked gently, his voice filled with empathy. I know it's been a rough night. Emma smiled faintly but didn't answer immediately. She looked around the hall, the empty space now echoing with the remnants of the evening. The decorations, though simple, had been carefully chosen, but now they seemed insignificant. The once vibrant atmosphere felt drained. Emma's eyes moved to the back of the room where the chest still stood. Untouched, the chest. It had been there all evening, quietly observing the festivities, never once drawing the attention it deserved. It was the one thing that had been part of her family for generations, a piece of her heritage, yet it had been overlooked by most of the guests. No one had shown much interest in it except for the few who had tried to lift it, laughing when it didn't budge. It had been a running joke all night. Emma knew her family had kept the chest locked for a reason. It wasn't something to be opened lightly. Her mother had told her that it held something special, something that wasn't meant for just anyone. It was a family treasure passed down through generations, but despite her mother's wishes, the chest had become the focus of the evening's mockery. She couldn't let it go. The chest held too much significance to be ignored. "Liam," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper, "I need to open it." Liam turned to look at her, his brows furrowing slightly. "Are you sure?" "You know, it's not supposed to be opened in front of everyone. It's meant to be a private moment." Emma nodded slowly. "I know, but they don't understand. They all think it's just a dusty old chest full of useless things. They don't know what it really means." Liam hesitated, then gave her a reassuring smile. "If you're sure, then I'll be right here with you." Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. She walked over to the chest, the familiar sight of its worn wood giving her a sense of connection to her past. The chest had been in her family for generations. Her great-grandfather had crafted it with his own hands, and it had been passed down through the years, a symbol of her family's strength and resilience. Her mother had always spoken of it with reverence, explaining that it wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a family heirloom, a symbol of all they had endured. It held the stories of their ancestors, the struggles they had overcome, and the sacrifices that had been made for future generations. And now, it was Emma's turn to carry that legacy forward. With a quiet click, the lock on the chest gave way, and Emma slowly lifted the heavy lid. She could feel Liam's eyes on her as she revealed the contents inside. The chest wasn't filled with old clothes or dusty trinkets. It was filled with gold coins, rare artifacts, and precious family heirlooms. These were things her family had accumulated over the years, carefully hidden away to preserve their value. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she gazed at the treasure that lay before her. She had never seen it like this before. Her family had always kept it hidden, out of sight, away from prying eyes. But now, here it was, a testament to the strength of her ancestors and the quiet legacy they had built. Liam stepped closer, his eyes wide with surprise. "Emma, this is incredible." Emma nodded, her voice trembling slightly. "It's not just money, Liam, it's history. It's everything my family has worked for, everything they've built. It's not just about wealth, it's about what we've endured, the sacrifices we've made." Liam didn't say anything at first. He simply stood there, taking in the sight of the chest and its contents. Slowly, he turned to Emma and smiled. "This is what you were trying to tell them all along, wasn't it?" Emma nodded again, a tear slipping down her cheek. "They don't understand. They never will. They see what's on the outside, but they don't see what's inside. This chest, it's not about showing off or flaunting wealth. It's about preserving the past, holding on to what matters." Liam reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I get it now. You're right. It's not about what they think. It's about what you and your family value. And this is something special." For the first time that evening, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. The judgment, the whispers, the mocking, it all seemed to fade into the background. She had Liam by her side, and now she had opened the chest. The treasure inside wasn't just valuable in terms of wealth. It was valuable because it represented her family's love, resilience, and history. As the final guests left the hall, Emma and Liam stood there together looking at the chest. It was a moment of quiet reflection, a moment that was theirs and theirs alone. Emma knew that despite everything that had happened, the night had ended on her terms. The chest had been opened and the truth had been revealed. Emma turned to Liam, a small smile on her lips. "Let's not let this day be defined by what others think. Let's make it ours." The room fell silent as the guests looked on in awe. No one had expected Emma's family to possess such wealth, and it was clear that the chest, once the subject of laughter and mockery, held more than just old relics. Emma could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her chest as the eyes of the room focused on her. But this time, it wasn't with judgment. Instead, there was something else in their gaze. a mixture of surprise and admiration. Liam stood beside her, his hand gently resting on her shoulder as if to say, "It's okay. You're not alone in this." Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. The people who had once mocked her for having a simple wedding, the ones who had whispered behind her back, were now standing in silence, unable to comprehend the significance of what they had just witnessed. The chest was no longer just an old family heirloom. It was a symbol of resilience, of history, of the quiet strength that had been passed down through generations. Emma's heart swelled with pride, but she remained calm, her voice steady as she turned to the crowd. "This chest," she began, her eyes sweeping across the room, "is not about money. It's not about flaunting wealth. It's about family. It's about preserving the legacy of those who came before us. It's about understanding the value of hard work, sacrifice, and love." There was a pause, and Emma could see the confusion on some faces. They didn't quite understand. How could they? They had grown up surrounded by wealth, by things that could be bought with money. But for Emma's family, what mattered was the bond they shared, the history they carried with them, and the lessons they had learned through hardship. Her voice softened as she continued. "My family never believed in showing off or living extravagantly. We've always believed in the value of love and loyalty. This chest has been passed down for generations, and it contains not just gold and jewels but the stories of our ancestors. Each piece inside tells a story of struggle, of survival, and of triumph." The guests stood in stunned silence. The mocking whispers that had filled the room earlier seemed like a distant memory now. They had underestimated Emma, her family, and the strength of their legacy. Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was her moment, not to prove anything to anyone, but to embrace her heritage, to honor the past, and to step forward into her future with Liam. One of the guests, Miriam, the same woman who had tried to lift the chest earlier, took a step forward. Her face, once filled with judgment, now held a look of respect. She cleared her throat before speaking. "I had no idea. I had no idea this chest meant so much. I thought it was just a piece of furniture, something to be laughed at." Emma smiled softly. "That's because you didn't understand its meaning. But that's okay. Not everyone can see what's hidden beneath the surface. But now you know. This chest is a part of who I am, who my family is. It holds everything we've worked for, everything we've sacrificed. It's a reminder that there's more to life than wealth. It's about the love and the stories we carry with us." Liam's hand tightened around hers as he spoke up. "Emma's right. It's not about the things we own. It's about what we value. This chest isn't just a symbol of Emma's family. It's a symbol of all of us. What we choose to value, what we choose to keep close, and what we choose to pass on to the next generation." There was a moment of silence as the weight of Liam's words hung in the air. The guests, many of whom had been so quick to judge, now stood in contemplation. Some shifted uncomfortably while others exchanged glances. The shift in perspective was subtle, but it was there. The mockery had been replaced by a sense of humility and realization. Emma looked around the room, her heart swelling with emotion. For the first time that evening, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel embarrassed or ashamed of her simple wedding. She felt proud of her family, proud of what they had built, and proud of the love she shared with Liam. As the evening continued, the mood shifted. The laughter that had once felt mocking now seemed genuine. Conversations began to flow more freely, and Emma found herself joining in, her earlier discomfort fading away. She and Liam moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, thanking their guests for being part of their special day. But something had changed. The people who had once looked at Emma with judgment now looked at her with a new sense of respect. Miriam, who had been so quick to judge earlier, now walked up to Emma with a warm smile. "I'm sorry for the way I acted earlier," she said, her voice sincere. "I didn't understand. I see now that this day is about something much bigger than what I thought. I admire the strength of your family, Emma." Emma smiled, her heart light. "Thank you. I understand. It's hard to see what's truly important when you've never had to struggle. But now, you know, this chest, this wedding, it's about love. And that's all that matters." As the night wore on, the last of the guests began to leave. The reception hall was quieter now, the music having died down, the lights dimmed. Emma and Liam stood together, looking around at the empty room. It was hard to believe that just hours ago it had been filled with people, laughter, and conversation. Now it was just the two of them, standing in the silence of the aftermath. "Are you happy?" Liam asked, his voice soft as he gazed at her. Emma turned to him, her heart full. "I am. I didn't think I would be, but now I am. It wasn't the wedding I imagined, but it was ours. And that's enough." Liam pulled her into a gentle embrace, his arms wrapping around her tightly. "It was perfect, Emma. Perfect because it was with you." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, savoring the peace that had settled over them. The day had been filled with challenges, but it had also been filled with love, and that was what mattered most. The chest had been opened, and with it, Emma's family's legacy had been revealed. But more importantly, Emma had found her own voice. She had stood up for herself, for her family, and for the love she shared with Liam. And in doing so, she had found strength she never knew she had. As they left the hall together, hand in hand, Emma couldn't help but smile. She knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, and that in the end was all that mattered. As the final few guests left the reception hall, Emma and Liam stood together hand in hand, looking around at the empty room. The music had stopped playing, the laughter had faded, and the once bustling atmosphere had given way to an eerie quiet. The room felt different now, emptier yet somehow more meaningful. It had been a long day, filled with emotions, surprises, and unexpected moments. But despite everything that had happened, Emma couldn't help but smile. The chest had been opened. The truth had been revealed. And most importantly, she had shown the world and herself that love and family mattered more than anything. She had never expected this day to unfold the way it had, but in the end, it had turned out to be more than she could have hoped for. Liam, sensing her calm, wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her closer. "Are you okay now?" he asked, his voice warm with concern. Emma nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm more than okay, Liam. I think I'm finally at peace." They stood there for a few moments in silence, simply enjoying the comfort of each other's presence. The weight of the judgment, the whispers, and the discomfort that had overshadowed the earlier part of the evening had melted away. Emma felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. The chest had been opened not just for the guest to see, but for her to finally accept her family's history, their strength and the love that had built everything she had. When Emma had first set her heart on getting married, she had imagined a day full of grandeur, a day where everything would be perfect, where no one would judge her, where everyone would appreciate the effort she had put into making it a day to remember. But the truth was, she had learned that it wasn't the external things that mattered. It was the love she shared with Liam, the support of her family, and the quiet moments that had made everything so special. "I never imagined this would happen," Emma said softly, breaking the silence. "The way the night started, I thought I'd never be able to show them who I really am. But when I opened the chest, something changed, not just for them, but for me too. It wasn't just about showing wealth, it was about showing who we are, what really matters to us." Liam smiled at her, his eyes full of admiration. "You showed them, Emma, and most importantly, you showed yourself. I'm so proud of you. I always knew you were strong, but tonight you proved just how much." Emma's heart swelled with warmth at his words. She had always felt a deep connection to Liam, but tonight as they stood together in the empty hall, she felt it more than ever. Their love had been tested in small ways over the years, by the challenges of everyday life, by the obstacles they faced as a couple. But tonight, it had been tested in a completely different way, and they had both come through stronger for it. She turned her face up to him, her smile soft and genuine. "You're right. It's not about what other people think. It's about what we hold dear. And I'll never apologize for that again." Liam nodded. "I couldn't agree more. This was your day. Ours. And we did it together." As the evening continued to wind down, Emma and Liam moved around the hall, gathering their things and taking in the final moments of their wedding day. Emma's eyes wandered to the chest again, still open, still sitting at the back of the room. The gold, the jewels, and the family heirlooms still gleamed softly in the dim light. But it was no longer just a chest. It had become a symbol of everything Emma's family had stood for, a reminder of their strength, their perseverance, and their unwavering love for each other. "I want to keep it open," Emma said, as if reading Liam's thoughts. "I want to show it to anyone who wants to see it. This chest, it's not just for us. It's for everyone who wants to understand what it means to be part of something bigger than themselves." Liam smiled. That sounds perfect. It's a part of who you are, Emma, and I think anyone who sees it will understand just how much it means to you. Later that evening, as the last of the guests departed, Emma and Liam stood at the entrance of the hall saying their goodbyes. The reception had been small, but the moments that had made it special were unforgettable. Emma's heart was full of love, of pride, and of gratitude. She had gone into the day with expectations, but she was leaving with something far greater, a deeper understanding of herself, her family, and what truly mattered. As the doors closed behind the last of the guests, Liam turned to Emma, his hand still resting gently on her back. You know, I never would have imagined how this day would go, but in the end I wouldn't change a thing. Emma chuckled softly. I know, me neither. We came here for a wedding, but I think we both left with something much more meaningful. The two of them walked hand in hand through the quiet hall, the soft sound of their footsteps the only noise breaking the silence. Emma felt lighter, as if all the weight she had been carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. The chest had been opened, but more importantly, she had opened herself up. She had allowed herself to be vulnerable, to embrace the love and legacy that had shaped her, and in doing so she had found the peace she had been seeking all along. As they stood outside, the cool night air filled their lungs. Emma looked up at the stars above, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. This was just the beginning of their journey together, and she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. I'm ready for whatever comes next, she said softly, her gaze never leaving the stars. Liam turned to her, his eyes full of love and determination. So am I, Emma. We're in this together, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Together they walked away from the reception hall hand in hand, ready to embrace their future with hearts full of love and eyes set on the horizon. The chest may have held their family's legacy, but their love for each other would carry them through anything life threw their way. And that, Emma knew, was worth more than anything else.